China's government is criticizing Washington for imposing restrictions on technology that seems to target Huawei, calling the move an abuse of export control measures. On Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning U.S. companies from using telecom gear from sources the White House deems a national security risk. The move against the firm comes amid a worsening trade war between Beijing and Washington. Trade talks fell apart last week, resulting in billions of tariffs from both sides. Huawei has released a statement on the decision, reading in part, "The decision is in no one's interest. It will do significant economic harm to American companies with which Huawei does business, affect tens of thousands of American jobs, and disrupt the current collaboration and mutual trust that exists on the global supply chain." So let's bring in Eric Geller. He's a cybersecurity reporter for Politico and joins us from their newsroom there. So, Eric, tell us what exactly this executive order prohibits, because clearly it's rankled China.
Yeah, so basically the executive order gives the Commerce Department the opportunity to write specific rules. So we don't know yet which countries or companies are going to be banned. The language that's used in the executive order talks about foreign adversaries whose products create national security risk, risk of sabotage. There's a term in there, catastrophic effects to U.S. infrastructure. So the Commerce Department is going to look at that criteria, and it's going to decide which companies and countries meet the criteria. I think pretty much everybody expects Huawei or China to be on that list in some way. The executive order is written in a neutral way to sort of head off some of the complaints, but it's clearly about restricting access for Huawei.
And when would this take effect?
So the rules have to be done in 150 days, which is around October, if my math was right. And there's going to be a public comment period. That's usually 30 days. After that, the rules are going to take effect, and companies that currently have Huawei equipment are going to be told that you've got to stop using it. You've got to take it out of your systems, and you're not allowed to buy it anymore.
And how much of this is about, 5G and the United States' position on that and on Huawei?
5G is a huge part of it. 5G networks operate differently than 4G networks. If you can compromise one of those networks, it's much harder to kind of constrain or limit the damage that can be done. And the State Department is very concerned about other countries thinking that Huawei equipment is safe. So the executive order is in part a way of saying, hey, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're banning Huawei. You should do the same thing.
And I read what China's response was in terms of how it believes it'll hurt Americans and American employees in Huawei-affiliated companies. How significant could it be if this does in fact go in, and if it is Huawei?
Well, the 5G market is probably going to proceed in the United States without Huawei no matter what happens. The major carriers here have basically said they're not going to use Huawei equipment. However, in other sectors not related to wireless infrastructure, there is a lot of Huawei equipment out there. Huawei is actually very popular in rural areas because it can offer low prices, and the rural telecom companies are very interested in finding the cheapest equipment possible. So this order is going to basically require them to change that approach and to start buying perhaps more expensive equipment. And one of the big concerns right now is the kind of Western affiliated companies like Nokia and Ericsson that have been building these networks in other places. They don't have the capacity to respond to the demand that's going to come from Huawei being pushed out. All the companies right now that buy from Huawei, they're going to need to buy from someone, and the alternatives are just not ready to supply that demand yet.
Interesting. Eric Geller, thank you very much.
Thank you.